Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Seth.
And I'm Zach.
I'm Denny.
And I'm Lester.
Wow, we got a big family today.
Big old reunion.
And we are the Classic Gaming Brothers. So, as evident by the amount of people that we've crammed into our studio today, we are doing another Indie Dev Lounge episode, which is very exciting. I love these episodes. They're a great way to not only meet the community, but also promote somebody else's work. So today we have two members from Possum House Games on with us today in our studio. Thank you guys for taking the drive fly, however you arrived here. We appreciate the time and energy for you guys to be here. Hopefully you enjoyed the coffee.
It was a long walk, but thanks for having us.
Yeah, the coffee's delicious. Can't get enough of this, really.
Yeah, sorry about the walk. For some reason, the bathroom to where we record is just a really long hallway. I can never figure it out.
Since that's our studio is just a long hallway.
Just a long hallway.
It's just one bathroom at one end and the studio at the other end.
No doors,
It looks like it looks like the spaceship from 2001. It's just a really long hallway.
We're on a budget.
But yeah, thank you guys again for joining us today. Before we get into any questions and talking about stuff, do you guys want to give us a quick, I guess, elevator pitch for Possum House and the games that you guys have?
Yeah, so we're Possum House Games. So it's just like the two of us, me and Lester, and we do work with like other contractors occasionally, but we tend to focus on kind of smaller experimental titles, and we lean into the kind of like 2D platformer-ish kind of realm. That's kind of like our happy place. We like to make games that are not too much a derivative of existing genres. We really like to mash things together, and I think that'll come up as we talk about our games, that like they're kind of weird and kooky. And but then we also lean into our pixel art. I mean, pixels are pretty. Did I miss anything, Lester?
No, pixels are indeed pretty.
Nice. Can you give us a rundown of the games that you guys currently have available?
Oh boy. All right. So the first game that I launched on my own that kind of kickstarted Possum House back in 2019 was The Sword and the Slime. It's a puzzle platformer, but you play as this magical flying sword, and the whole game's only controlled using just the mouse. And for like narrative reasons, you are like magically bound with this like slime creature, like kind of think like from D&D, and you kind of indirectly guide it around, and you have to like use both of these kind of awkward creatures in tandem to solve puzzles and defeat enemies and progress through these like very deliberately designed little kind of tight level puzzles. The next big one after actually the one that me and Lester met on and worked together was Heavy as the Crown, which is a like short little game you can play online for free. It's a top-down kind of resource management game where it's pretty much you're a shepherd and you're trying to like keep your like your sheep from wandering off the screen, but then how many sheep you have at the end of the day is how much money you make. You use that money to feed your family, buy more sheep, and it gets really brutal and intense until you inevitably fail. It's a very happy game. Okay, lightning round. Okay, Shot in the Dark. That's kind of our big one. That's kind of our flagship title. Cowboy Western game where you play as a bandit fighting demons in the dark, 2D platformer, but combined with a point-and-click shooter. So almost think if Mario and Duck Hunt had a weird baby and everything wants to eat your face. But the third part of Shot in the Dark is the art itself. It only uses black, white, and red, so a lot of the enemies blend in with the background, and the game is about obscuring visual information. So it's a very like tense kind of hard, difficult game that a lot of people hate me for. Lester, you got Tank Pig. I need to take a break.
But before Tank Pig, we actually have Space Cat 9, our action platformer roguelike, where you play as a cat battling evil mice bent on taking over the moon because the moon is made of cheese. You play as a cat hero trying to stop them, and they're in all their mechanical machines. Yeah, they're all little mice and robots that you fly around their spaceship. Not fly, you're a cat, but you're zipping around, jumping, pouncing, and fighting these robots, all to stop them. And Tank Pig, our latest prototype, which you guys had the chance to play at Retro World Expo. Play as a cosmonaut piloting Tank Pig in her full arsenal. In another kind of puzzle platformer, not puzzly per se, but it's kind of like a Metal Slug meets Blaster Master hybrid, where you do have to find your way through some puzzle elements and kind of coordinating both Tank Pig and the cosmonaut. But you also get a couple of times where you get to just shoot a bunch of bad guys.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun playing Tank Pig. I liked where you had to like use the pig, as it were, to control the rocket that the tank shoots and like move yourself and essentially like figure out where you need to put your character in order to guide the missile in the right direction. I thought that was a pretty unique mechanic, especially coming from like a Metal Slug game where you're just gonna it's gonna go in one direction, it's gonna go. If you guys like Metal Slug, perhaps Tank Pig will be something that you guys should keep an eye out from coming from Possum House Games.
And I've played the Sword and the Slime, and I played Heavy is the Crown. I haven't finished Sword and the Slime. I actually just recently started playing that. But I thought Heavy is the Crown was like, I loved it. I was like, I think one of the things I liked about it was that it gave me a very strong Papers, Please feel to it. Not necessarily the gameplay of Papers, Please, but the whole what do you need to buy versus what do you have versus what are you willing to lose element of Papers, Please. Like, do you want to spend money on potentially getting the shotgun from the basement, or do you want to spend money on getting food for your family so your wife can eat, sort of deal?
Shotgun.
Shotgun. I thought that was a really clever mechanic, and I also thought it was a contemplative game where it just felt very sad but very good. Not sad in like the traditional sense, but just a very melancholy game. You feel like there's this sense of loss that you just kind of can't help but go toward. That's a very deep sentence that I've said, but that's just that's the emotion it gave me.
I'm really glad that you say that, because like then we hit the nail on the head, because that's what we were going for. And I just really want to say that like Heavy is the Crown holds like a very special place in our hearts as a team, because it was like the first game that like me and Lester like literally worked on together. We had known each other in the community in Rochester, like, you know, the local game dev community here.
Yeah.
And the local college was hosting a game jam, and me and Lester went, and then like we were like, oh man, this place is like full of like, you know, like freshmen and like juniors. And we're like, oh, we're old. And so we saw each other and we're like, hey buddy, do you wanna work together?
Hello, fellow old person.
And then it was a really super cool jam. It was actually like based off tarot, which was really cool. It was a unique structure. Each team drew their own one card at the beginning, and then the organizers drew like two more cards, like one the next day and one the last day, and you had to like incorporate that theme into the game, which was delightful and nightmarish.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah,
it's kind of like Chopped.
Kinda, yeah. It was literally, yeah. It was like, take this and fit it in, and we're programming. What the why?
Nice, that's fun.
But yeah, on the sad note, I will say, because we were shooting for that, is because we drew the Upright Emperor, which means like benevolent leadership and like
responsibility, and
it's all on you.
Yeah, I wrote the hardest lines of code I've ever had to write for that game. If you choose to not feed your family, you have to code in that they stay dead.
And last thing I'll say about Heavy is the Crown, as you mentioned, feeding the wife, like who do you choose to feed? It's actually a fun litmus test with people. So there's no mechanical benefit to keeping her around, but if she does pass, the music stops, and that's it. There's no benefit, no nothing. It's just keep playing.
This is your life now.
Interesting.
Because of your choices.
I'm excited. I'm gonna definitely check it out. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the game jam that you guys met at. We haven't really talked about game jams on the show, and so our audience may not necessarily be super familiar with them. So you mentioned, you know, going to like a university and room full of young guys and gals and all that jazz. Have you guys competed in a lot of game jams over like how many hours or days are you given with these? I'm aware of like some virtual ones where you're given like 2 weeks or so to do a game. Is it like, could you guys kind of explain the game jam process, as it were?
Yeah, so game jams are traditionally a period of time in which you create a game from concept to something playable by the end of it. Most common ones are 48 hours, typically a weekend from Friday night to Sunday evening. There's a couple of virtual ones that are pretty popular that happen globally. Global Game Jam, Ludum Dare, those kinds of things. Yeah, and on occasion, some of them are competitive, usually on occasion for prize money. In other cases, just for likes, votes, rankings, awareness. But one we particularly met at was just a casual game jams. There wasn't any prize that I remember. There wasn't any. It was just more just for the fun of creating. But yeah, the local community tends to kind of host some of these a few times a year, and we can kind of show up at a particular space, whether it's a co-working space, a university, and participate based on what themes the hosts are presenting at that time. So at the beginning of the jam, when the jam begins, is when we're given a theme, and that's when the game starts. You start ideation to come up with the idea, the concept, start designing, and it's all very like positive energy, creative energy, all rushing from every direction. I believe we were one of the two that a lot of other teams were turning their heads at us because they kept hearing sheep noises coming from our corner as we were recording the sound effects for the game. Yeah, just hearing that, a bunch of grown men in the corner making that noise.
Yeah, they know they're up against some stiff competition.
Yeah.
I think someone was like live streaming when like, they're like, oh, hey, here's a rat. And then just in the background, they're like, what the?
Perfect. Do you guys use any particular, because obviously video games, their basis are computer programming and code and stuff like that. Is there any code that you guys are most familiar with or that you kind of lean towards?
So yeah, I handle the tech side of the company. So I went to school for computer science, so I got to learn a bunch of different languages, and I actually work in the industry with C++. The particular engine we choose to work with is Unity, which uses C#. So
Yep.
Okay.
yeah, we use Unity, C#, as far as art tools, GIMP, Sprite, programming languages. As far as code, during game jams, you have the option, the jam itself, to either bring some base code, a group of already pre-written code that isn't specific to any game, or coding it all from scratch. Me coded it from scratch.
Nice.
Because I did not plan ahead for that. So.
And before I met Lester, I worked, because I don't know anything I can't write a single line of code to save my life. I worked in Construct 2 and 3, which allowed me to do visual programming, so that's how I was able to make some of the first stuff. And then I met Lester and I was like, magic.
So we're all obviously video gamers, or else you would not have come on to a podcast about video games. You guys all have played video games. What have you guys been playing like lately? Like what's been your latest kick, as it were?
I recently started getting back into Subnautica. I played it a few years ago.
Nice.
But it was on sale on Switch, and of course it got me because it's on Switch.
Yeah.
And I've been playing that a whole lot. I kind of just like living in an open world where I get to just build bases, explore my own leisure. My relaxing game, despite all the scary moments.
Are you playing OG Subnautica or the Frozen one?
The OG one. I do have it came with
Nice.
the Frozen one as a bundle, but I haven't started it yet.
Oh. And Denny?
I've actually been diving back into, I just got Dark Souls Remastered. It's just hard to believe that game's already 10 years old. I'm just like, wait, what? But no, it's been, in a weird way, kind of relaxing, despite it being Dark Souls, but just kind of revisiting it with, like, knowing how to handle it and still, like, kind of exploring and, like, rediscovering it. Yeah, it's just been good, like, walking around, like, almost like going back to, like, the old college campus in a sense of just, like, reliving those memories and just kind of, like, going for a stroll while, things try to eat your face. That's been a lot of fun to revisit.
I think games like the Souls games and like Bloodborne and stuff, they can be really relaxing in a weird way, despite how frustrating they can be. But sometimes you need that kind of catharsis that they bring, especially when you get to a level where you're good enough at the game that you can just like mow down the simple bad guys before you get to a boss. It's just kind of, there's this kind of edge of catharsis, almost like playing Doom, where it's just like, yeah, I can just mow these guys through and I'll get to the boss and then I'll struggle a bit. But once you get into that rhythm, I think that's kind of where the relaxation gets. It's like meditation. You have to get into the rhythm.
Yeah, really. That's actually, I couldn't have put it better myself. That's kind of where I've been at.
I haven't gotten into any of the Dark Souls. I'm bad at video games enough that like I don't have to play a game that's like deliberately tough is just like I'm turning on like easy mode on like simple games. So I'm like Stardew Valley easy mode.
So you're gonna love Shot in the Dark. It's a good time.
So Lester, you talked about how you're more of the tech side of things, and you do more of the programming. Denny, you said you're more into the creative side. So how would you guys describe, I guess, your roles?
So I handle like a lot of the creative stuff. I'm like predominantly like the artist for sure. Like everything you see, I do like the pixel art, the level design, the animation, and I also tackle like a good chunk of the game design. So like a lot of the concepts that you're seeing, like Shot in the Dark, I actually like was working on for a while, and then I brought Lester on to be like, help me.
It was too late for me to stop him at that point. I'm sorry, guys. Sorry, everyone.
So yeah, I handle that side of things. And Lester?
I handle the tech side of it. So programming, producer activities, planning, release management, all this other stuff that it requires to kind of make a game. Just all the logical stuff, not the creative stuff. I do help out with some of the design when we have our design sessions. I don't touch art. I try. I moved his pixels around a few times to make some animations. That's about it.
You've done really good. I like your little mouse bounce you did.
Thank you. I can move pixels up and down and then up again. Very well. I'm very good at that.
Video games are that fun mash of artists and scientists, really, like engineers and artists going hand in hand to make something, which not a lot of mediums have.
I like the idea that, you're both in on the design session, because I'm sure there's been times where maybe Denny has an idea that Lester is like, well, if we look at the technical side of this, it might not be as feasible as what your design, like on paper, something might look entirely different than how it could look in code. And I'm sure it's great to have, Lester there next to you during those sessions to just be like, why don't we just do this slightly differently so that we can make more sense in the game logic?
That's very much how we work. So it's very much like him coming up with an idea, design, and me saying, all right, cool, we can't do that, but here's this other thing we could do. And I think it's one of the more important things about just the game development experience. We have to be kind of in on it together to know how to fit our respective pieces in there. It's one of the few industries where you have to work with someone completely outside of your field. An artist, a musician, a designer, level designer, like those are all specializations that kind of all need to know a little bit about each other in order for the game to get made.
Yeah, for sure. Like a musician doesn't need to know anything about how to program or art or do anything. And same, and like voice actors as well. If you have a game that has like a voice actor, so it's a lot of like hidden work now because people think that computers can just do everything, and there's a lot more inputs. It's the old garbage in, garbage out. If you put a lot of effort and love into a game, you're going to get something good that's going to come out. And I don't think people realize that.
That's kind of what we're touching on a bit, is like we each have to wear so many hats. It's not just like, oh, I'm the artist and I don't like do anything else. Like I'm like in there doing like the level design. And then as Lester said, like he really keeps the ship running on like behind the scenes as far as like, okay, we need to have something organized. We need to have documentation. Like we have a proper Google Drive because of Lester.
Well, you need like a project manager at the end of the day.
Exactly. There's so many hats we have to wear, and then there's social media.
Yeah, and then leading the designs. He has to be there as part of like the planning part of it, even though he may not like get all of it or get why we're doing it or anything like that. But he has to be a part of it every step of the way because it's gonna hit him later on.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
So in some way, shape, or form.
And both of you guys are full-time Possum House.
I am right now, but we also tend to like do like contract work. We're like living the freelancer life on top of doing our own stuff.
Yeah. So we kind of alternate between being full-time on Possum House and being part-time as we do other contract stuff and things like that.
Gotcha. And then you guys will source out if you need like a musician or...
Yep.
But I mean, you have your regular people that you work with, but you guys are essentially the core of Possum House, and then you move out from there.
Yeah. Speaking of contract, shout out to our boy Boschfire, who's done like the music for like most of our games. Yeah, his stuff's great, and like has somehow managed to make like a fantasy game and like a horror western 8-bit, and then also like just Metal Slug, like Guile theme tank pig stuff. So shout out to him. But yeah, we have a lot of people who just kind of like orbit and help us out. We've recently been working with someone who actually helps our business stuff. Thanks, Ash. Predominantly, it's just me and Lester screaming into the void.
I know. I think majority of my conversations were with Ash.
Yeah, I was mentioning earlier how great it is to have her that just respond to you guys, like have those conversations and be like, oh, okay, we have to, okay, got it, following it. And she tells us what we have to do when. It's beautiful. It really like lifts some of that weight off to have someone just around to help with that.
You guys talked about how you two met through the Game Jam. How did you guys get into game development in general?
It was around like the indie boom when like Limbo and Fez kind of like started popping up. And I'm in like my second like last year, middle of college. And I'm like, I look at that and I'm like, I could do that. How hard can it be? But no, it really was just like seeing these smaller voices like just coming out with stuff. And then I kind of just started doing pixel art in my free time as a hobbyist, and then like kind of hitting my head against Construct 3. And it really was just like a long chunk of just like, like trying to make stuff on my own. I slowly got more involved with the local community in Rochester, Rock Game Dev, and from there I started learning more, like doing game jams and meeting other people. Like I'm like meeting Lester, and then I launched my first game, like full game, and that was Sword in the Slime in 2019, and that was about 3 years while doing like part-time jobs and stuff. And then the last thing, which kind of will dovetail into more where Possum House came from, is that after Sword in the Slime, I got accepted into the same institution where we had that game jam, RIT. There's the Magic Center, where like it's like they make like they do like movies, they do games, and they have this incubator program for community people like me who did not go into games for academia, but we have the skill set, and they provided like resources and funding, and like they gave me a desk, and that's kind of when I was able to commit to game development full time, and I got into that program with Shot in the Dark, and then through that I was like, Lester, and he's like, yeah.
We had just come off
that's
that working
my
on heavy
story.
account for that. Yeah, for me it was I had that spark of game dev like passion when middle of my school engineering degree, not for games, just normal science, computer engineering. We did a hackathon, and it was the first time I was exposed to like Construct 2, I believe at the time, which was one of the game engines that you mentioned earlier. And it's just how easy it is to kind of put things together. I knew how to program, but that's actually more of a visual logic block application. But it did definitely sped up the process of like getting idea to playable very quickly. So did a bunch of that, and I was like, wow, this is a lot of fun. All these games are pretty silly, but I think one of my very first ones was catching a ladybug in a cage. Don't know what the concept was there, but just to see the fact that I could actually like tap on the screen and drop a cage on a ladybug, it was pretty fun. Didn't have much time to look at it after that until I graduated, and then I started as a hobbyist, kind of looking at it part-time, watching a bunch of tutorials, and eventually just self-teaching in Unity and C#. And funny enough, I actually flew over to San Francisco for the Game Developers Conference one year to find that there was a local community of game devs in my community, back on the opposite side of the country.
You met them over there?
I met them over there, yeah. I met them in San
That's
Francisco,
great.
a local
That's
Rochester
great. You're like,
community.
oh, you live down the street.
Yes, that's how I met Rock Game Dev, and I started to get involved with the community events and started meeting other people just like Denny. And I think that's kind of a very similar journey in that I started solo, teaching myself, playing around with a bunch of different things, making small little games and jams. And then I branched out to saying, oh, wait, working with other people is a lot more fun and a lot easier.
It's tough, though, to like put yourself out there to work with somebody else. At least initially, I feel like.
Yeah,
or at least it would be.
that was definitely the case for me. I was hesitant. I was like, I don't know how I feel about working with all these people. I don't know anybody here, but we like talking about games. And I think there was one time when I actually first met Bosch, our musician for most of our games. We were there for two different reasons. We were actually trying to get some work done, and we spent the entire evening talking about games and got no work done. And I was just like, this is what this community could do. Cause you not get your work
if you
done.
just record it, you'd have a podcast, right?
Yes. Some of our community members actually went off and did that, I believe. But yeah, after doing a few jams with the community, met up with Denny on that game jam to do Heavy as the Crown, and then he approached me for like some help with Shot in the Dark, and I was like, yeah, sure, why not?
So, how and when did Possum House itself get kind of rolling?
This actually dovetails off what we just kind of said. I established Possum House as a studio to launch Sword in the Slime, just to be like, okay, I want to like have like a developer thing like handle other than just like my name. And then from there, it really did pick up, because that launched in December or September.
Sword in the Slime released in October of 2019.
Right at the end of the year there, that launched, and then it was like literally like the week after, like is like a palate cleanser. Me and Lester did the Heavy as the Crown jam, and then I had Shot in the Dark prototype, and then like the incubator started like in December, and that was really like when things started getting rolling. And so we worked on Possum House. We worked on Shot in the Dark for about a year, launched it like we launched in January of 2021. And then, yeah, like that just the past 2 years, we've been kind of taking contracts, sometimes together, sometimes solo. We started working on Space Cat 9 together. We actually got hired on for that one. But then like the person who hired us was like, yeah, no, like you guys have an established IP. Do you want to publish it? And we were just like, yeah, which is a little bit of an unorthodox but cool situation. So yeah, that's kind of when we started, and we've just kind of been rolling ever since. And yeah.
The $1,000,000 question is, where does the name Possum House come from? Because personally, I will say possums are one of my favorite animals, and anything named after a possum makes me happy.
Well, I mean, like, it's speaking as a always internally, externally screaming, anxious creature myself. I always identify like possums just like shrieking and just like ah. So I kind of like just ran with that, and possums are great, and they just play dead because they freak out. And they're just adorable, and I'm like, I feel you, and I understand you, and I like your little grabby hands.
So you just identify as a possum.
A little bit. I mean, we all have like little borderline persona icons as our like little like Discord and Twitter icons. It's so but yeah, Possum House, it kind of just like I don't know, I was just kind of like going for like a cool rustic kind of backwoods cozy cabin with a little bit of Evil Dead 2 vibes, just possums chilling in the woods in a cabin.
And so I really like the logo, but it's you have a picture of pixel art of like a possum eating a house, and it's like gigantic possum, unless it's a very small house. So it's either a very small house or a gigantic possum, and then it sometimes animates where the possum eats the house. It's fun, and
thank you.
I love it. It's a great logo. It's a great brand. I think it has a lot of character to it, and I think it's a fun. You guys seem like a fun company. Like so far, you've been fun in studio. So I assume you guys are fun off mic as well. So.
Well, we're obviously having a blast. But yeah, no, I appreciate it's good to hear that we knocked it. I've designed one logo in my entire creative career, so it's good to know I knocked it out of the park.
That's how you do it.
So we talked about this earlier in the episode a little bit about all the games that you guys are working on and have in the pipeline. We will also, in the description of the episode and in the social post, we will obviously link all of Possum House's information so you can find these games. And we'll do a little rundown of all the games the projects that they have out there. So you'll be able to find them where they're located and be able to check them out. I've heard that one of them is free, so I know our audience loves free stuff. So definitely check that out. But what type of games do you guys like to make?
So I always forget his name, and I should have had it pulled up, but the guy who did Ico and Shadow of the Colossus.
Oh,
He has a very particular like design philosophy, which I kind of adhere to, but I came at it from a kind of a different angle, is design by subtraction, which is like, because Ico, if you've played it, it's
I have.
You understand there's no extra fluff, there's no health bar, there's like only like 2 interactions you can do. Because I came, as we've mentioned, we came from like like an indie, like super indie side of things, so we don't have a lot of resources, so we approach things with a very strict minimal viable product kind of approach. Like we cut content out of necessity a lot, and so I kind of merge that concept of like design by subtraction and a minimal viable product to be like, okay, I only have 2 sticks and a rock and we have to share the rock, but what can I make with that is unique and interesting?
Yeah, that kind of ties into how Shot in the Dark was made, right? You only have 3 colors. What can you do with it? You can't move while you're shooting, but you can move when you're not shooting. What can you do with it? And that's the whole game of Shot in the Dark.
And we got like 80 levels out of that. Like, it's like a 2 to 4 hour game. You can jump, move left and right, shoot and reload, and go indoors. There's no health bar. There's only a bullet counter icon as an option because people bugged me enough. And then I was like, okay, fine. But other than that, it was like I'm compelled to see what I can do like creatively with limited resources. And that leads us into kind of like, we tend to do more smaller like pixel platformer puzzle oriented kind of games, but not like capital P puzzle. Like, we're not doing like Sokoban games. We're doing like, like kind of like action, fun, adventure games. Like we mentioned earlier, they're not like Metal Slug. They're not like, a bullet hell shooter. We have very deliberate, each room we tend to be like, okay, here's a problem that you need to solve, instead of just like shoot it till it's dead. It's like, definitely with Shot in the Dark, it's like, okay, I can't see these guys. I need to use the environment to find them. Or like, oh, I can see the reflection, but I can't see the monster. Where is it? And similar things with like, like like when you guys play Tank Pig, it's like, all right, I see that there's like this block I can destroy, but I have to find a way to get the rocket over there, but Tank Pig's stuck. So we like to create more deliberate problems that you solve, but they don't feel like an arbitrary puzzle room. And when I played like Zelda games, I always like got out of the experience, and I'm like, I'm running around adventuring, like jumping into a dungeon and exploring, and then all of a sudden it's like, push the blocks until the door opens, and I'm like, no.
I've been playing through the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and they do it too. Like that game came out just the other year, like what, 2019, I think. So we're making games today that you still enter into a room and they're like, this is the puzzle room.
Yeah.
it's time to figure it out.
Yeah, we try to off that. It's like we not brainless, but you have to like put a little bit more thought into it, and like just how we place our enemies and stuff. Like, I think that was weirdly a compliment. One of my favorite comments that I received about Shot in the Dark is someone's playing and they're like, like 15 levels in, and they're like, they squint and they're like, is this a puzzle game? It doesn't look like a puzzle game, but what? And I'm like, yeah.
Surprise!
Some of the best puzzle games are games that don't look like puzzle games.
Exactly.
You kind of touched on this in the answer. You said you do tend to lean toward more 2D platformers. So that you would say that's probably more of the, I think, genre that you guys are primarily interested in. But do you ever dabble in other realms, I guess?
Yeah. 2D platformers is kind of where we focus it, because Denny's really into the level design aspect of just the whole process, and that's one of the places where you can kind of easily, or maybe not easily, I just make the thing work. I don't design the levels. But yeah, we've also taken the same kind of concept of creating a puzzle with surrounding like possibly competitive elements, where it's like in a first-person environment, for example. Or a top-down one. Heavy's the Crown is a top-down game. With a puzzle element there, I'd imagine would be the tough choices you have to make inside the house once you end your day.
It's an internal puzzle.
Yeah. But yeah, we typically like to stay focused on 2D platformers, but we do occasional prototypes either in a top-down setting or first-person, sticking true to like the pixel art aesthetic all the way through, even in first-person.
Yeah.
Where we found some tools to kind of help us make 3D environments, but with pixel arts slapped on there.
Just paint that on the wall.
Looks actually pretty
Slap
cool.
it on.
I think with the pixel art, I would say that some of your games do seem to have at least some draw of inspiration from retro titles in one way or another, especially in the art style. But would you say there are any retro games in particular that you guys find you draw more inspiration from than others?
I want to, like, on that note, kind of touch back to what you just said about, it's like what pixel art can be, and that like you don't need high-end graphics. This ties into the retro aesthetic, is that like, I mean, I'm always diehard that like art design always like leads like like graphical specs. Like some of the best looking games ever made were like made in like 1992.
Oh yeah.
And I will die on that hill.
No, yeah.
To that point, like I grew up on the Game Boy, like almost exclusively for a long time, and it still to this day boggles my mind like how much can be crammed on these like little pieces of plastic, and how much emotion and story and narrative and worlds can be just with pixels. And like that always, like to this day, like still blows my mind that like you can like imprint on a fairly simple image of just like, that is a broken man wandering the wastes, and like his horrible story, and it's like, yeah, that's like 10 pixels tall.
I mean, just look at Pokemon.
Right?
Billions and billions of dollars from a game that, if you look at Pokemon Red and Blue...
I once saw the entire map of Pokemon Red like put out as one image, and it is so much smaller than I think I ever realized. And I was like, that game felt massive as a kid. Like, it felt like I was in an open world, and it's really so limited in what they had. It's impressive what game designers had to do to make their world seem so big.
And the game that did that for me, to directly answer your question, was Link's Awakening. Like, hands down, top game. I cried legitimately when the announcement dropped. If I hear the Ballad of the Windfish, I will weep. But yeah, it's really crazy how much of an impact a bunch of pixels can have on like your life. Just oof. And if that won't, no spoilers, but yeah, like the ending of Link's Awakening, that still hits me today, as hard as it did when I was 6. And it destroyed me when I was like, I'm 6 years old. I'm not ready for this.
One of my favorite retro games was Link's Awakening as well. I also grew up with that. There was a Mega Man game. I can't remember which number of Mega Man it was, but I to this day remember the passcode to get to like the final stage, um, where you have all the abilities. You're about to fight the final boss. I don't know why I remember that, but there wasn't things that save data back then. So yeah, and Pokemon Red. Yeah, those are the kind of the three big ones for me back in the Game Boy days that really kind of spurred the whole gaming life that I led afterwards. But I think from retro aspects of it is, Danny kind of mentioned it earlier, just overall limitations in the breadth of, I guess, gameplay and emotional response that is generated from how little that was available to the developers back then is just one of the larger inspirations moving forward with like all the Possum House things. We try to create these limitations, 3 colors, a few couple of movements. You only have one control input to branch out to as much as we can. I mean, Heavy is the Crown. You don't do many things there, but it's very emotional. And as you struggle, kind of, make your choices.
So we've talked a lot about opportunities and challenges that we've faced. And by we, I mean you guys. What would you say is the biggest challenge that you guys face in regards to tackling creating games for Possum House, or challenges that you feel maybe not necessarily the biggest, but ones that you see regularly?
I think which we kind of felt this with just like the past few years with everything going on with like COVID. It like normally game design, it's a very isolating kind of experience. I think that's kind of one of the harder aspects. Like me and Lester, like we bounce back and forth. We look out for each other, but like we're also like we're wearing a lot of hats, and like we're like always like really like nose to the grindstone on all of like the stuff that we're doing, that we don't always have like a big like up top down level view of like the impact we're making. Like we always feel like, because our noses are in it, that like we don't realize, like we feel like, oh man, we have so much to do and we're not getting anything done. And then like we'll take a step back and like it's like, oh, we've made like an absurd amount of games in like 2 years, and like we have solid reviews. Like we got on PC Gamer. It's just really hard to see that stuff when you're just like you're in it and you're working and you see there's always so much more you have to do. I think we touched on this earlier, that just there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, and like people like, yeah, you hit the button and you make the game and it goes pew pew, and it's like
No,
it's
more.
it's crazy.
Just a little bit
Yeah.
more, just to, But yeah, then you hit the nail on the head there. It is kind of taking a step back and just acknowledging our accomplishments is really the more challenging things when you have a backlog of like all the upcoming tasks that you need to do just to kind of get the game to a state that you can deliver it or market it or play it. Yeah, we try to kind of mitigate some of that isolation that we get by doing a lot of co-working. We had a regular community event going on, trying to bring some other fellow devs in while they're working on their own games, we're working on our stuff, but we're doing it together in our own virtual room, just to kind of have the sense of like camaraderie, and you're not alone when you're making your game. I mean, yeah, you are making your game by yourself because I'm not helping you, but you are in a room virtually with someone else.
Yeah. So yeah, just sharing the space with somebody sometimes.
Yeah.
Even if it's silence, like it's like just like the breathing of somebody else being next to you. I think that's kind of been an underlying theme of the last couple of years too.
And part of that isolation too is the fact that like we output a lot, and like you're not always getting that like feedback like from, I mean, this is why I thank you guys so much for putting us on, that it's like, oh yeah, people do see us and like what we do, and we don't always hear that. So it's definitely, there's like some interesting mixed messages of like when people do see our games, they're like, wow, this is like really good stuff. But then there's just long periods of like silence. It's a weird headspace to be in as an indie developer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm sure there's like also like probably when it comes to a product being deployed, you'll have it when you initially deploy the product, you'll have a lot of buzz and stuff around it. So you'll have a lot of criticisms and compliments coming in initially. And then it'll probably like, there's a term for it when it goes
Tapers
yeah,
off.
where it just tapers off. It goes askew. That's the word I was looking for. It goes askew. So like you'll start pretty heavy and then it'll go and taper off. And then if you do an update or something, you may spike that up again because it'll show up in like everybody's Steam or whatever. It'll show up that there's an update to the game and you have to download it. So you'll see like, what are the patch notes and what is this? And then you'll be a little bit more involved. So then you may get another rating or something like that. So I'm sure that's kind of like, for an indie dev, it's probably even more sensitive to it, right? Because it's not like you're seeing like hundreds of thousands of like comments and criticisms all at once from like EA dropping whatever FIFA 2022 out. They're going to obviously get the critical feedback that they're going to get, but they also have a multi-million-dollar budget for one game.
Sometimes the marketing budget's bigger than the actual game budget. It's mind-blowing.
The cost of marketing will sometimes outweigh the entire cost of a project, and if you guys can't do that, then you're at an unfair disadvantage, right? It's fortunately, like, I feel like with platforms like Steam and itch.io, and I think Good Old Games works in a very similar where you can go to them and you can bring your product to market that way. You don't have to hire a publisher or anything. You can do, because I think you've self-published all of your games.
We've just done everything as Possum House as our own to this point. Yeah,
those platforms that made it accessible for us to be able to do that.
Right, because if there was no digital distribution, you have to be like finding a CD place to print CDs or doing mail order out of your house, which is what they had to do when I first started playing video games.
Some old school Doom ROMs. Let's go.
Ask people for $5. You'll give them the unlock code for your freeware.
People should do that. Just like go back to sending freeware on like floppy disks to people for $5. Just like send me $5 in cash.
Back in like real old days, they used to go to local computer stores and pin up floppy disks to the bulletin board, and that's how you would get demos. So just imagine going to like a bulletin board and just pulling a USB drive off and being like, "What's on here? Oh, games!" Totally safe.
A virus.
Yeah, totally.
Just dead drop our demo disc.
So we talked about a couple of you games that you guys have coming out. We talked about Tank Pig. Zach and I were fortunate enough to play Tank Pig at Retro World Expo, which you guys attended back in November. And you also mentioned Space Cat 9, which is an open beta. So if I was a listener and did not have the inside track to reach out to the Possum House devs directly, what would be the best thing for me to do in order to know about when your games are coming out or close to release? Or because obviously, let's say I'm a listener and all I care about is when the game is going to be out and when can I buy it or play it. What would be the recommendations that you would give me to figure that out?
So I would definitely follow our social medias, our Twitter, sign up for our mailing list. If you really want to get an early scoop on stuff, definitely get in our Discord. Like Tank Pig, we've only been doing kind of closed play testing and demos through the Discord or when we're at an event. So you really can't find it because it's kind of hush hush right now. Or just go to our website, possumhousegames.com, and you'll find links to everything. We have a pretty wide net.
Yeah, you can find the link to sign up for the mailing address at the website. All our socials are on there as well. You can follow us on Steam or itch.io as well to kind of keep tabs on the games that we release. But yeah, our Discord is kind of our early info distribution there. So people there get their info first, and then we end up posting on social and eventually send out some mailing lists just when the key stuff happens.
So engage at the level of interactivity that you want to engage in.
Yep.
Awesome. And now, do you guys have any plans for beyond Tank Pig and Space Cat 9?
So right now, we're kind of... one thing that we're actually working on right now, which is kind of to help bridge some gaps internally, is I'm actively learning some Unity stuff, kind of on the programming end, so I can work more directly with Lesther. Ideally, the goal is to make more content for our existing IPs. So it'd be just really, instead of making a whole new game, just explore what we've already done. Have some more shot in the dark levels. Maybe do some Sword in the Slime. But that's kind of the big focus right now. And that being said, Space Cat 9, that's definitely on the docket in the pipe. Go play the open beta. It's the core game is there.
Yeah, we'll be releasing that to Steam sometime later this year. We just got to polish off and add a few more content additions to that.
And then, Tank Pig is kind of the next, that's going to be the next thing that's new. Because that is a super early kind of vertical slice. What you guys saw on the show floor is what we have. There's nothing else. And it was just we got 5 levels. I think I added 2 more since then.
We've polished up the prototype a bit more since you guys had a chance to play it last at Retro World. But yeah, we have Tank Pig coming down the pipe. Space Cat 9 definitely is being released sometime later this year. Don't say definitely. Sometime later this year.
Sometime later this year.
No definitives.
Yep.
We also have some potential DLC coming out for our existing titles as well, and we have
cool.
a prototype, first-person pixel art exploration that we
Ooh.
might be launching this year, if not this year, next year.
So the Possum House stuff is best to go to the website, which is possumhousegames.com, and that's all one word. And then all of your socials are Possum House Games.
Twitter is Possum H Games, and Instagram, I believe, is Possum House Games.
Okay, so go and follow all of them. They're also on Steam. You can go to Steam and you can find them as a developer/publisher. I think is what because you guys publish self-publish.
Both.
Yep.
You can see all the games that they have on Steam. They're also on itch.io, and I believe you can find their creator page as Possum House Games on itch.io.
Yep.
So go itch.io, Steam, find them there. You can follow them on Steam, so you can if you want to learn more about or keep them in your developers that you give them a follow. Purchase all of their games, just why not? We recommend it. And then Denny, Lester, I really appreciate both of you guys coming on.
Thank you both for coming.
This will mark our first episode where we've had more than one guest. It has strained our studio to the limits. We may have to add a chair. Unfortunately, Denny had to stand this entire time. So do you guys have any parting words of wisdoms for our fan base or anything of that nature?
Parting words of wisdom.
Keep listening to the podcast. Follow some indie devs. Support podcasters and indie devs and other creatives that you enjoy.
Beautiful.
I like those words of wisdom.
Those are great words of wisdom. If you want to listen to more Classic Gaming Brothers, we're available wherever podcasts are listened to. If you want to contact us, you can email us at classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. And you can follow our socials, which are Classic Gaming Brothers on Facebook and Instagram. We're also on Twitch, Classic Gaming Brothers. And then we are CG Brothers Pod on Twitter. Zach, is there anything else that I missed?
Don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Zach.
And I've been Seth.
I've been Denny.
And I've been Lester.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers and Possum House Games.
That's right.